All right, welcome everyone to tonight's event. We're going to get started in just a couple minutes. But for now, please join us in the chat group and let us know where you're joining from and what team you play for. We're excited to have a lot of teams represented here tonight, and we're happy to have you on with us. We'll be waiting and we'll get started in just a minute. Looks like we have folks coming all the way from Baltimore, from 8-Bit Heroes. Quick shout out. Again, we'll get started in just a couple seconds. Just want to give everybody a chance to go ahead and get online and join us here on YouTube. And again, if you're just joining us, go ahead and put that team or that location that you're joining us from in that chat box over there on YouTube. We'll go ahead and shout you out as you come up. All right, well, we're just going to go ahead and get started and get right to it. Hello and welcome to Emerge from the Shadows, a live question and answer event with the Washington, D.C. Shadow. We're so glad you could join us tonight. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Laura Oldershaw. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and my racial identity is white. And I am one of the members of the leadership committee here for Shadow. And as you may know, DC Shadow is Washington, D.C.'s first professional women's ultimate Frisbee team. Through building a sustainable program that fosters an inclusive, accessible, and competitive team, Shadow's mission is to empower and bring visibility to women players and leaders as a means of promoting equity in the sport of ultimate. We envision a world in which women and gender minorities are seen as competitive athletes and role models. Though we've all faced a few unexpected challenges this season and all miss playing ultimate, the team is really invested in keeping up our momentum and engaging with you, the broader ultimate community. Which brings us to tonight. We're going to hear from Shadow players tonight in a series of panels that cover everything from training to coaching to representation in ultimate to what it is like to play at the world's level. We've collected questions from the community to help guide tonight's discussion, and we hope that we'll be able to provide you all with helpful information that's applicable to middle school, high school, and even college players. And to the rest of the ultimate community tuning in today, thanks for joining us. And remember, we're all kids at heart. And so, of course, tonight's events would not be possible without the strong support of our sponsors, VC Ultimate, Layout Gloves, Spin Ultimate, and the Premier Ultimate League, the Women's Professional Ultimate League of the United States and International. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started now with our first panel with Why Shadow, featuring Kristen Franke, Teresa Hackett, Lisa Dang, and Verena Lawson. So going to our panel, we'll give them just a second to pull that up. Our first question is, why did you decide to try out for Shadow?
So my name's Kristen. Hi. I think for me, I was really excited to try out for Shadow. I've loved seeing the mission of the PUL over the last couple of seasons as it's gotten formed. And I was super excited to hear there was going to be a team here in DC. For me, I didn't get to play last season because I was pregnant. And I was really excited for the chance to get back in shape and see if I had what it took to get back out on the field. So February and tryouts were my deadline for getting ready to go. And I think the other thing that was really important to me in the tryout process and thinking about why I wanted to be on a professional ultimate team was to be able to say one day to my daughter that I was on the inaugural team in DC.
Hey everyone, I'm Teresa. Similar to Frankie, I was excited to get back into Ultimate after a little bit of a hiatus. I was living in India for about a year and a half, so I missed a full season and then a half of a second season. So I was just thrilled to have an opportunity to jump back into DC Ultimate, even before the next club season, and get a chance to play with some old faces, people I played with in the past, and then get to play on the same team as other people that I had competed against, like in college and, also in club as well. So I think I was just excited to have an opportunity to get back into the ultimate community in DC and probably give back in more ways than I had prioritized in the past.
Hey, I'm Verena. So I actually live in Pittsburgh, and there was obviously not a PUL team available in Pittsburgh. So kind of the two closest options for me were either the Columbus Pride team or the DC Shadow. And then the past 2 years, I've played club in DC for Scandal. So I've kind of had one foot in the door already with the DC Ultimate Community. I've had a really great experience with them. So yeah, I was just super excited to get back into, playing Ultimate and being part of the, inaugural women's team in DC. I think something that's really unique about the DC area is it pulls players from kind of that whole DMV area. And we had a lot of, different players from different states and a lot of players that I've played against for years at regionals, and just kind of that opportunity to be on the same team as a lot of those people that you've played competitively against for so many years, I thought was just going to be a really neat experience.
Hey everyone, I'm Lisa. I decided to try out, kind of honestly wavered between trying out and not, because I felt like I didn't really have a name out there and people didn't know who I was. And it was kind of my first opportunity to step outside my comfort zone, which is really intimidating when everyone I saw at tryout was kind of already established or well-known. So it gave me an opportunity to see where I stood in comparison to everyone, and just to see if I could even play at the highest level of Ultimate and see if I could establish myself. So.
For sure, and making the team establish yourself, you did. Unfortunately, as we all know, due to COVID-19, the PUL has decided to cancel the upcoming season. What are some mental health strategies that have helped you stay positive while rearing with this difficult news?
Maybe I'll go first this time. It was definitely disappointing to hear the news that the season was going to be canceled. I think it was probably on a lot of our minds leading up to that announcement, just not knowing what was going to happen in general for the world, let alone, our season, which I think I can speak for everyone was really important and something we're all looking forward to over the next couple of months. Some things that I've tried to do during this time, just kind of, accepting the fact that we're going to have to wait till next year to be on the field together again, is we've done a few calls as a team, which has been really fun just to see people's faces and hear what people have been up to and the highs and the lows, and doing the same even with friends outside of Ultimate. And then I think another big thing that we'll probably have, some future questions for is trying to still be active, even if it's not Ultimate related, and just moving around, going on walks, being safe all, the while, but just trying to still stay active so that I can feel connected to, this outlet that's really important to me, and that's being fit and hopefully preparing to play with people whenever I can, not knowing when that will be.
think one of the things, this is a little bit ultimate related and mostly not, is really trying to think about on a regular basis what I'm grateful for. I think at the very beginning, it was easy to focus on the things I was sad about or the things I had lost or the things I felt like I was missing. You know, when the news first came out that PUL was canceled, when I found out that my gym was closing, when I found out, you know, a variety of things getting canceled, closed, or shut down, you know, going to work at home, but trying to take every day to remind myself, what are the things I'm grateful for today?
That's a good one. Lisa, have you done something similar to that as well?
Yeah, so I'm pretty restless, and staying active is kind of easy, but I've kind of made it a game for myself, since I feel like no one really knows when Ultimate's going to resume. So I've kind of been in the mindset of, if I keep working on like these strengths and my weaknesses, that when it does resume, I'll be ahead of the curve instead of behind, and that I won't kind of lose touch with anything I've been working on. And especially leading up to we had tryouts and practice and stuff, like one practice, but making sure I'm still staying fit and working on all the throws that I've been trying to perfect. So trying to stay ahead of the curve.
And Verena, we'll go next with the next question to you. So previously to the season being canceled, what were you most looking forward to?
So this kind of goes along with my initial answer of why I decided to join the Shadow. Was just, I thought it was going to be a great opportunity to want to play more Ultimate, obviously, but to also just kind of build relationships with a lot more people in the Ultimate community that I haven't had a chance to play with. You know, it was, like I said before, I think something that's unique about DC is that it pulls players from a lot of different areas. And for me, just kind of that opportunity to play with a lot of people that I've played against, you know, like Lisa, she played, you know, on VA Rebellion. So we see them every year at regionals. For me, that was kind of what I was looking forward to the most, just kind of building those relationships with new players, and having that opportunity to learn and develop from new players and new coaches.
And Frankie, I know that we've talked off kind of outside of these conversations around coaching in the city. What were you really excited about to bring those worlds together?
Well, I was really excited about the coaching staff of Shadow. My very first season playing club, I was Allison Matiska's teammate and looked up to everything she did on the field. So I couldn't wait to have her being our head coach. That was one of the things I was most excited about in the announcement of the Shadow.
And for those watching, we will be bringing on head coach Allison Maddox later for some other questions. But just to get back to this panel, Hackett, you mentioned coming back to DC. What has it been like to rebuild a community with Shadow and with players here?
It's been a lot of fun, actually, even before Shadow started. Coming back in August, I wasn't sure if I'd get a chance to partake in any of the last season, and I was really lucky and thankful that Space Eater, welcomed me with open arms. So I got a little bit of a chance to get back in the groove. And then as soon as it started, it was over. So I was definitely excited for Shadow to start up, have something to motivate me to get through the winter and kind of the downtime. And yeah, like an excuse just to get to know more people, like Verena was saying, and beyond the ones I've already met over the last few years that I've been really fortunate and have all become, not just teammates, but, friends that I continue to talk to while in India. So it was really fun to come back, and I was already, really looking forward to seeing everyone every weekend and putting all the time in together and, learning from each other. So, and actually also having the, a lot of community focus too with Shadow was really exciting, because I think in the past, it hasn't been as big of a focus on some club teams as we were gearing for it to be for Shadow. So that was going to be a new experience for me and something I was excited about, since I think I definitely have gotten so much from this sport and the community that I would love to give back. So something I'm still excited about, in whatever ways we end up deciding to do this year and next year.
And you talk about giving back, and just to put a couple players on the spot, Lisa, how do you intend to move forward with this this almost baggage, lucky baggage, I should say, privilege would be a better word, of being a shadow player and bringing it back to your community while we are stuck in home?
Yeah, so I kind of just wanting to make Ultimate known in the sense of like, it's even just like not having to explain to people that like PUL and pro is a thing. Kind of trying to, I guess, make it real known in the sense that like, because I'm a part of it, that there is a connection to it. So people who aren't known to Frisbee, that like me going out there and saying, hey, like I do this cool thing for this awesome team that has this great mission and it's real. And like, I'm proof of that, and kind of hoping that that's a direct connection to Ultimate to help spread to people that otherwise like wouldn't even know. And I guess like a great example is like, I work in palliative care, my boss, and when I told him I made the team, he was like, pro, that's weird. And then all of a sudden he was like, oh, like Lisa, she's pro, like guys, like Frisbee, go check it out. And like kind of telling patients when I walked into the room in a very humble way, I guess. And I was like, geez, like that's, I don't know, but kind of spreading it that way directly and letting people know that like it's PUL's a thing and that shadow is formed, even though like coronavirus kind of set it back, but it's still very much like we have a mission and it's going to be sustained and or hopefully. So yeah.
And Verena, in Pittsburgh, how has it been communicating and talking to some other players who have also been playing for Columbus?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of like a general sense of just disappointment that this season didn't happen. Because I think last year, I don't think anyone from Pittsburgh really traveled to play for a POL team. And this was kind of the first year where we had a big number of people either go to Columbus Pride tryouts and then also to the DC Shadow. So I think, kind of after the initial year of the POL, it really gained a lot of momentum just in 1 year. And I think the fact that we had, so many players willing to travel to play for, different teams was really exciting. So hopefully, we can kind of keep that momentum going. And I think even just like having 1 weekend of practice or just kind of laying out the foundation for the season, I think was, really exciting for everyone involved, and just still really hopeful for the future.
And to end this panel, we'll take it to Kristen Frankie. Any thoughts on the future of Shadow and what you hope to see for some of the younger players you've coached here in DC?
I would love to see all of them at tryouts next year.
Well, we will encourage everyone to go ahead and follow along on our social media as we wait to give you the tryout information for next year later this fall and December. I just want to quickly thank all of these panelists. If you have any follow-up questions, please email us at dcshadowultimate@gmail.com, and we'll make sure to direct those to the right people. Thank you again to this panel. I want to go ahead and bring on our next panel. Let's make sure I have the right background. That's right. It's going to be Coaching Ultimate. And for this one, we have Christine Valvo, Eliza Pugh, Amy Wickner, and Shadow Assistant Coach John Aiken. Welcome, folks.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christine Valvo, and to tell you a little bit about my coaching experience, I have mainly coached in Arlington, and it's been a lot with kind of newer players to the sport. So I've done some EULA, I've coached elementary, middle, and high school Capital Ultimate camps, and I also have coached 1 season of high school girls aces, go Monarchy. My favorite part about coaching is getting to know all the players and kind of just seeing how they grow throughout the season.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eliza Pugh. I've lived in DC for a few years now. I moved here after college and have coached in a few different capacities. I've coached at the National Ultimate Training Camp, a sleepaway camp for Ultimate Frisbee in Amherst. I've also coached at School Without Walls. Shout out to any Flightless Bird Squad team members who are listening tonight. And I currently coach Sky Mall, a high school girls Frisbee team in the DMV area. I have a lot of favorite things about coaching, but I think one that stands out is really seeing individual growth. I love seeing players show up at a fall practice and, maybe they're new to the sport and they pick something that they want to work on, whether it's a flick or a backhand or something like that. And they set a goal and they work really hard at that goal. And then I get to see it develop over the course of a season and be a part of that. So I really like that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wix. I've coached in a couple of different contexts. I coached 2 seasons of college with Georgetown Women's Ultimate, Huck Foyas. I coached 1 season of club with Backhanded Ultimate. Both of these are women's teams. I've also coached here and there at clinics for youth college players and adults all over the place. So not just in the DMV, but at travel tournaments, including with WOTC, the local Frisbee league that you're all familiar with, and with GUM, the Girls Ultimate Movement. So I've also filled in as a coach at the college level with Maryland Helpful Corn, that's the women's team there in college, and in club with Grit, which is a team you'll hear more about in the next panel. So those are just kind of subbing in situations where the regular coaches were unavailable or needed a little bit of an extra hand. So my favorite thing about coaching is when something really clicks for a player and it happens outside of a context where they ask a question and they get an answer that they're expecting. So this might be where someone has been struggling with something for a while and they finally figured out, often when they're working on something completely different. Or it's a situation where somebody has been doing something on the field successfully for a while, but then they suddenly realize why exactly it's so important to the team and to the offense or the defense. And that can be a really huge boost in terms of confidence and sense of belonging. So both of those are really hard to plan for, but we try to lay the groundwork as coaches.
Great. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Agan. I'm an assistant coach with the DC Shadow. This is actually would have been my first year as a full-time coach. So I'm kind of new and looking forward to listening to other folks on the panel hear about their experiences. I played in DC since 2006, including 10 years for a club team called Truck Stop, where I was a captain, and on a team without a coach, captains are often kind of player coaches. So that's part of where I've drawn experience from. And I also played with the DC Breeze and served as an interim coach for a season there as well. My favorite part about coaching is the unique perspective on Ultimate that you get to take and kind of need to adapt being a coach. So many of us are exposed to the game as players when you're learning about how you fit into a team and what your role might be on the field. And it's been a great opportunity for me to work with our world-class coaching staff here to kind of see the game in a different way and figure out how I can contribute to this program being as successful as it can be.
Awesome. So to think about success, but to also think about the growth of coaches, what is the best piece of advice you've gotten about coaching?
I'll go first on this one. Excuse me. So the practice that I come back to pretty often is to just try to watch and ask a lot of questions. That comes from an NBA player who talked about coaching his daughter in high school. So the hope is that players, with that approach, players grow up knowing themselves, like their own strengths and weaknesses. And as they get into higher levels of the sport, they're able to talk with coaches and their peers about what they need to work on themselves. So they won't wait to be told how to develop into the kind of player that they want to be. And something that I return to a lot, especially because I often find myself coaching folks who are either relatively new to playing competitively or are trying to level up in some way to make a big change.
I can take the next answer. So I coached a lot in the beginning, especially with teachers, and they taught me a lot of things, but I think the most important one was to always lesson plan your drills and your practices. So have in mind a goal for what you want players to get out of a drill, and use that to figure out how you're going to introduce and frame the drill. So for example, if you want to do a break mark drill, it's important to introduce the drill with the context of when a player is going to find themselves in that position on the field, and then explain to them how they're going, what their options are for breaking the mark. And that having that game plan will help the players get maximum utility out of doing that drill at a practice.
So I guess the best piece of advice that I've gotten is from the people that I work for at the summer camps that I've coached at, and it's to really emphasize the spirit of the game with the younger players and to make sure that they're having fun and to stay positive.
Yeah, I think my advice is pretty similar. I think just getting being open to understanding how different players receive feedback and take criticism and learn different things, and then also how they prepare best, and what will help motivate them to be their best self.
Of course. And we'll take this next question to the players, Wix, Christine, and Eliza. So in Ultimate, with seasons overlapping, how do you balance being both a coach and a player?
Yeah, so I do this in two different ways. One is through timing. So not coaching club when I'm playing club, for one thing, and then coaching college during the club off season and having set boundaries about, working with the team to sort of onboard and offboard and make sure they're clear about what my availability and commitment are and what they need from me during those different times. And the other way is actively letting go of assumptions that what works for me as a player is necessarily what's going to work for other people, or, and this is just distinct, what people are going to need from me as a coach. So that's an ongoing process that I try to work on.
So I'm an elementary teacher, and my summers are kind of perfect for coaching and playing at the same time. So rather than trying to keep them separate, I like to take whatever I'm learning in the club season as a player, and kind of from watching how my coaches coach me, and figuring out how I can, improve myself as a coach in what I'm coaching them and how I'm presenting it.
Yeah, building off of what Christine is saying, I like wearing the different hats of being a coach and being a player, and I like to take what I learn from coaching and learning what players I find are really coachable, and I try to take kind of what they do and then apply that to my club team and think like, what can I do to kind of be a better player for my coach on my club team? And I think something that makes players really coachable are, quick learning, asking a lot of questions, asking for feedback, giving 100%, trusting the coach, etc. And so I think they can really inform each other, both being a coach and being a player.
Of course. And I totally understand all of that. It's as a coach myself, the balance between the two is a really wonderful and fun and always a surprising combination, I feel like. So to get away from kind of the theory and to go more into the X's and O's, what are your favorite offenses and defenses to coach and teach?
I'll take this one first, Laurel. I really love teaching zone offense. There's nothing more fun than like seeing my team struggling against the zone defense and being like, this is how we're going to beat it. I'm going to show you, you're going to dump and you're swing and you're going to work it up the break side. And that's just really exciting to see kind of a plan implemented in action on the field.
So I think my least favorite is probably zone offense against the team Eliza's coaching. But I played the majority of my career as a cutter and a defender, and so no matter what O or D we're talking about, my expertise and I think what I'm able to draw on best is thinking with players about how they're defending downfield cutters, and on the flip side of that, how offensive players can put defenders in situations that are as difficult as possible to get us yards and move down the field.
Awesome. So I found HostAct really fun to teach because of my experience. It lends itself to breaking down the different components that work together to produce an offense or destroy an offense, depending on how it's going. And then also learning and practicing those different components and different combinations. And I really love coaching zone and junk Ds for a similar reason, both for like the sheer variety of combinations and variations, and also how you can zoom in on, say, how these two players work together, or how the different units that exist within a zone at different times as it's shifting to take different things away from the offense. So I guess what I have is more of a favorite process for coaching O&D than a specific system.
I really enjoy teaching the side stack offense. I think it's really fun to open up all the space on the field for players and get to isolate them to show off their footwork and other kind of cool stuff that they're able to do.
Awesome. And we'll go ahead with this next question. So thinking about future coaches, what piece of advice would you give to younger players who maybe are thinking about coaching in the future?
I'll start on this one. Definitely always plan and prep ahead of time. Make sure that you have cones and discs and you're there on time. Maybe show up early.
Yeah, to build on Christine's advice, I think part of preparation is like having a backup plan and being willing to go to it. And then one of the things you figure out over time is like when exactly to go to the backup plan.
I think for me, the biggest suggestion would be to think about, as you're playing or experiencing Ultimate, notice what other coaches are doing that you see as really effective. And maybe it's something that really helped you understand something or get over the hump with a goal you or your team was setting, or something that seemed to work really well for other people, even if it wasn't something that you would have thought of necessarily as an effective strategy for one of the roles that a coach needs to play. So, take notes, think about as you're being a player, what do you really like about coaches that you have? What do you think you'd like to do differently? And have that kind of be how you build what your identity might be as a coach in the future.
I agree with all of my fellow panelists. I think to any aspiring coach or young coach, I would say that coaching, just like playing, takes practice. You're not going to be immediately good at it, but that's okay, because you're going to learn so much even in your first season, your second season, as time goes on. And every time you'll pick up little things that make you a better and stronger coach. And it's kind of an art that takes a little bit of time to hone, but it's worth the ride. And I encourage everyone who wants to start on that journey.
And we'll go ahead with a last question here from the crowd, aka YouTube, from Raymond Mendoza to the players. How do you decide your goals as a player, and what does your self-evaluation process look like? We'll go ahead and start with Wix.
First of all, hi Ray, thanks for watching. I think the process for me is always changing. I set goals, for every season, but often have to break that down within a season to think about, I have these process goals, but what does that look like for the early season, then for the middle of the season, and so on. And sometimes there are tournament related goals and all of that. Because I have so many process goals relative to outcome goals, I tend to work towards them by thinking about what I want to accomplish in this practice, and then journaling about it afterwards and sort of getting feedback from teammates and coaches, things like that. So a lot of process-oriented evaluation as well as process-oriented goal setting.
I would agree with Wix. If I want to set a goal for myself as a player at the beginning of a season, I will ask my teammates and coaches for a little bit of feedback as to what I can improve on to help the team run its systems, and then create a couple different goals based on that to work on each practice throughout the season.
Yeah, just echoing the other panelist, I tend to kind of shape my goals around what's going on with the team I'm on. So as I change different teams and have different coaches, I like to, again, ask for feedback and think about where I want to see myself after different points in the season. So it might be after each tournament, or I guess by the end. So just checking in regularly and doing a lot of self-reflection.
Yeah. So to all those coaches out there who constantly preach process goals and have a struggle with your players trying to win a lot, congratulations. You've just been reaffirmed here that process goals are a fantastic way to plan for your season. And unfortunately, that is all the time that we have today for this panel. But we just want to go ahead and thank these panelists again. Hey, if your team out there needs any help coaching or finding a coach, please reach out to dcshadowultimate@gmail.com, and we would be more than happy to help and see if we can try to solve some of those coaching problems that you're going through. Awesome. I'm going to pull up our next panel here. Is going to dive into the club scene in the DMV area, and we are so excited to welcome Meg Tucker from DC Rally, Becca Arbacher from DC Grit, Nada Tremonti from DC Scandal, Hannah Boone from DC Space Heater and previously Scandal, and Allie Wallace from Virginia Rebellion. So first question, what do you love most about your club team?
I'll start. My favorite part about Richmond Rebellion is definitely the close-knit feel. Being a part of Rebellion gave me a community and a tie to Richmond immediately. So after finishing up college at JMU, I decided I was going to move to Richmond. I didn't really know a lot of people, and joining Rebellion just gave me that community. And because Richmond has a smaller ultimate community in general, our team is pulling from a smaller amount of people, and we all just become best friends immediately. So that, I think, is the best part of Rebellion. Is it's a small community and it's a tie to Richmond, and we really use that to set expectations for each other, and to just have this like kind of underdog mentality that we all buy into.
We'll direct this question now to Becca. I believe you might be muted. So we'll go ahead and take it to Nada until we get Becca back on.
Okay, yeah. I have played for DC Scandal for the last 5 years. And just from being on the team for so long, my favorite part by far has been my teammates. Like they're just very driven, fun, and goal-oriented people. And I love being able to have a goal together and achieve it all together. And I just think over the years, the team has developed and changed a lot, but every season we seem to come together with a wonderful group of people who are so driven and hardworking. I'm just so happy to have met and to have played with all the people that I have.
All right, back on everyone, sorry.
Welcome back.
So I'm Becca, I'm one of the captains of DC Grit. And I think one of my favorite parts of Grit is that it's a vibrant, driven community of women focused on growth, both individual and as a team. So after a season playing with Grit, you know that you've gotten better as an individual player and you've gotten closer and more competitive with your team. It leads to a wonderful balance of high quality ultimate and also a community that you can do everything from play mini with to watch Love Actually to call when you're having a bad day. So I really like that we found a balance of being able to provide a competitive team environment and still be there for each other.
So yeah, I've played for both Space Heater and Scandal in recent history. Most recently Space Heater, and making that transition from women's to mixed was a pretty nerve-wracking one for me. I was definitely worried about the role of women on the field, and so that's what really appealed to me about Space Heater is how much they value women as a team, women voices, women's roles on the field, and the whole team really worked hard to elevate female players, and so that was huge for me, and I really appreciate that. And for both Space Heater and Scandal, I think there's just this culture of positivity, and I oftentimes tend to get kind of in my head about making mistakes or get down on myself, and I always felt like both teams, my teammates were always there to lift me up and never dwelled on mistakes. And so I've always thought that was a really important aspect of team culture.
All right, nice. Hi, my name is Meg. I play for DC Rally. One thing I really love about Rally is that it's all about competing and being a family, which makes it feel like a really safe space for all of our successes, but also our failures. So I really just appreciate the positive culture.
And Hannah, you dived a little into this, so we're just going to go ahead and follow up to think about this transition from women's to mixed. How did it go for you? And to both Hannah and Meg, how would you describe, who've played Elite Club mixed, what is it like playing high level mixed compared to playing high level women's?
Yeah, sure. I'll start. Yeah, like I said, I was worried about the transition, just not really having played high level mixed before and having played for Scandal for 4 years. I was pretty used to having a role on the field. I'm a tall defensive player, and that's pretty important on the women's field. But when you're on when there are 6'3" guys on the field, that's not really as important. So I was really nervous about losing that role. But what I've found helped me was really just focusing in mixed on my one-on-one matchups and just shutting them down. Or, oftentimes we're in a position where we had 2 women downfield on defense and 2 women on handlers. And so it was really fun to be able to just bracket with the other woman defender and you get to work in a lot more of these kind of one-on-one or two-on-two situations, because on defense you can kind of divide between which players you're matched up against. And then, culture-wise, playing on Scandal versus playing on Space Heater were very similar in that, it was high stakes. We played a lot of high stakes games. People really wanted to do well as a team, really wanted to succeed. But Space Heater is a pretty unique team in that we didn't practice as much and have necessarily the same formal tryout process as other club teams did. So that's not at all a generalization across other mixed club teams, but it is a situation that Space Heater had. So it was kind of fun to be able to play a little bit more loose, even at some of those high level games.
Yeah, my experience with high level women's ultimate is limited, but I would definitely echo what Hannah said about playing different roles on the field in the women's game. I really enjoyed that and felt a little bit enlightened when I experienced that. I was like, oh wow, like I'm so much better at this one thing in the women's game that I feel like I don't really get the opportunity to do in mix. But either way, I think whether you choose to play women's or mixed, each season of club you play, you'll see yourself getting better and better. Like playing rally and high level mix has really given me an opportunity to grow, I feel like, really quickly. And so I really appreciate that about my mixed experience.
Yeah, and you go a little into this concept of growing over a club season. So to prepare for that is obviously a tryout process that, depending on what city you're in, can be pretty extensive. So what is one thing you wish that you knew when trying out for club teams?
I'll start on this one if I successfully unmuted myself.
Good.
So I think these are sort of two different things wrapped into one, but it is really important throughout the tryout process to be proactive and get to know people. It can feel pretty intimidating when you're stepping up into a tryout where a lot of people already know each other. People might have played on the team the year before, but really it's your opportunity to get to know the team, get to know the individuals, and figure out how you'll fit on the team. And also, I wish I'd felt a little bit more comfortable just owning the player that I am and not trying to be something else. I tend to be a very fast deep cutter, and throwing isn't necessarily my strong suit or where I shine. But when I was first trying out for club teams, I was still in college, didn't really know what I was doing. And I definitely felt that I had to excel in all areas at the same time and didn't really let myself play the kind of ultimate I knew I was good at. So in retrospect, I think I wish I'd felt a little more comfortable owning what kind of player I am and how I can show myself off to my best advantage.
Yeah, very similar to what Becca said. Going into it, I wish that I was competitive, but didn't treat tryouts as a competition, if that makes sense. So some tryouts and combines can be super overwhelming by the number of people that are there. And because of the number of people and the drills and the skills that you're seeing, you can get kind of caught up in comparing yourself. But setting a few small goals before you go into the tryout, I think, is super helpful. So knowing I'm going to show off my deep cuts and my speed, I'm going to show off my awesome backhand hucks, and that I'm a great sideline presence. Knowing those 3 goals going into it and kind of letting those shine and taking control will make sure that you're playing your best and showing off your strengths. And I think by being on the other side of it and kind of running a tryout, I'm able to really see those players that highlight their strengths. And it's nice to see as a captain, because you're like, oh, we need that as a team. And that speaks to what Becca was saying about the fit. It's really important to find a club team that you really fit with and who can highlight your skills. So by setting those goals and really showing them off the most you can at tryouts, I think will allow you to succeed the best you can.
Yeah, and I'll hop in next. So for me, trying out for club teams started later, and something that I wish I'd known when I was younger and starting to play Ultimate. So I started playing when I was in college, and was, rapid fire, learning so much, starting from square one, learning how to throw, everything like that. But by the time I got to the summers, I thought, all right, I'm already learning a lot here. I'm just going to take summers to myself and not play Ultimate. And I really wish that I had known how much the exposure to seeing different types of systems through club would help me as a player. And I also kind of wish that I had just jumped in earlier. And so I think the fact that all of you are on this phone call means that you're much more cued into it than I ever was when I was first starting out. But I would just say that it's going to be a big help to your game to see something different from what you've learned on your high school team or on your college team, and to get the exposure of what mixed could look like in the club setting, what women's could look like in the club setting. I think it's just a really great opportunity. And then in terms of the actual tryout itself, I have actually nearly the same advice as everyone else who's spoken, which is come out there and showcase your best stuff. Like in your mind beforehand, either think through it for yourself or maybe talk with a coach about what actually totally what Wix was referencing, which is like knowing your strengths and weaknesses. And so identify your strengths and then make sure that that's what you bring to the table. And so if you know you're that really strong deep cutter, put yourself as many times as you can at the front of the line for the deep cutting drill that comes up. Just put yourself when you can in those best opportunities to showcase what you're best at.
Yeah, and it's a perfect lead into our last question, which is what advice would you give to college players and younger players trying out for club teams? Allie, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, I would say just treat it as an experience, an opportunity to play with people that you don't normally get to. I think that was the best part about trying out for DC Shadow, was that I got to play with all these people that I've played against for so long. So treat everything as experience and try to take at least one thing away from every tryout or club combine that you go to.
I guess I can go next. I would say it's really helpful to get to know the club teams if you have time, because I know it's difficult if you're coming off a college season, but if you have time, get to know them in off-season pickups and stuff like that. Show them what a great teammate you can be. I think that's a really valuable quality and might give you the edge over someone else who you may be equally matched with in tryouts. And also, don't feel intimidated by players coming from impressive college programs. If that's not your experience, there's always room to grow and find different experiences that help you get to that level. So don't let that intimidate you or slow you down.
Just kind of reiterating what a lot of people said, but I think the most important thing that you can do as a young player is just go to tryouts, go to the women's combine, go to the mixed combine, and just get a feel for it. Even if you have to go to college and you can't really necessarily be around for the club season, you might not have plans this year, but just getting to know teams, getting to know people in the area, and thinking of it as a learning opportunity. And then down the road, once maybe you do have the availability to play for a club team, you'll feel more comfortable in that setting.
So I agree with everything the panelists have said thus far, definitely about getting to know teams and there being a lot of different benefits from being able to play with different teams. But I will add on that I think, again, proactivity is really important, especially if you're a college player who's going to be in a different area for the summer. Do some research on the teams in the area, email teams, email coaches. Don't be afraid to ask for feedback during the tryout process, because you can learn so much just from different opportunities to put yourself in different positions, hearing from different coaches than you've had before. So don't be afraid to ask questions, do your research, email teams in advance.
And that is all the time we have for this panel. But for any players out there who do want to do a little bit more research, we have so much representation here on this team today and in the future, and we'd be happy to answer those questions, even though we don't know where the club season is going. So please, if you have any more questions, email us at dcshadowultimate@gmail.com, and we'll pass those off to the appropriate teams. The other great thing about social media and websites that's been building for local club teams is that there's a lot of information out there, and we encourage you to check those out too. All right, well, our next panel, unfortunately, we will not have enough time to get through all of the big topics we want to talk about here. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome our panelists and let them introduce themselves.
All right, I'll go ahead and start. This is the panel I'm actually supposed to be on, so sorry for intruding on the first panel. My name is Adelina. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. I am Ecuadorian, and I'm also white. In preparing for this panel, we all thought about the best way to share why representation matters. And so we decided to think of personal stories to reflect that. And then also to think about multiple levels on ways that representation matters. So individual relationships, in a group or a team, and then also in our greater communities. So I'll be starting, and then we'll have Bowser, and then we'll have Ashley go. And so to get things off, I think representation matters because I believe we can only really build meaningful relationships if we engage with a person as a whole, including all of our intersecting identities. And so I wanted to share a story from an experience I had in high school. Just by way of background, so as I mentioned, my background is Ecuadorian. So my father is Ecuadorian, my mother is white. I was born and raised in Ecuador, and I moved to the United States in 1999. And so when it came time for high school, my parents decided they were going to send me to the high school where my mom went, and it's an all girls Catholic high school, and it was predominantly white. Going there, I was excited, and I decided to join the lacrosse team. This was my first time playing a club, or not club sport, a team sport. And I think it has a lot of the same things that we love about Ultimate. There's already a connection there. You have teammates who you can just immediately connect with and feel a sense of place. And so I developed a lot of great relationships and a lot of great friendships from that experience. And there was this one day though, where we were going to an away game, and I was sharing that I was going to be going to Ecuador for my quinceañera. And I was super excited because this was a big birthday and it's a great cultural experience, and I was gonna be celebrating it where I'm from. And so thinking about that, I was super pumped, sharing this with my teammates. They're all super excited for me. One of my teammates was a little bit quiet, and then she looked at me so earnestly and so excited for me, and she said, "Oh my gosh, are you gonna get to meet your birth parents?" And I was just stunned, had to take a second, but then I just started laughing my ass off. And oh, sorry, everyone else was laughing around with me. And I was like, "What are you talking about? You've met my parents. You have seen both of my parents on the sideline cheering us on. What?" Like, so we basically just called her a ditz. We laughed it off, moved on from it. But thinking about that and reflecting back on that, I really can't wrap my head around why she thought I was adopted after seeing my white mother and my Ecuadorian father at my games. And was it something that I did? Was something missing there? And it definitely created a division in our friendship. And I mean, this was someone who, it wasn't just a teammate, this was an upperclassman. I looked up to her. I really considered her a friend, but after that, I was really hurt by what she had said, because how was it that she didn't see the plain truth about me? My parents were a big part of supporting me, making sure I engaged in the sport, being part of something else to help, make me more well-rounded. And she assumed that I was adopted, even though, like I said, the plain truth about me was right there in front of her. And so, like I said, that really caused a division in our relationship, because she hadn't engaged with the full truth, with my full truth, and hadn't seen me for me. So I think what I want to share with others about representation and why representation really matters is because it's a way of sharing our different experiences and backgrounds, and it's a starting point for how to meaningfully engage with one another. Because really, it's only when we really see each other, when we fully understand each other, that we can really engage. And so that's my story. Thank you all for listening. And now I'll pass it on to Bowser.
Thank you so much for sharing, Addie. My nickname is Bowser, but my real name is Jillian. My pronouns are she, her, and I identify as Taiwanese American, but in the US, this means I'm Asian. And similar to Addie, I'll be sharing a little bit about what that representation means to me, specifically as an Asian female athlete in Ultimate. So when I was a child, my idol was Michelle Kwan. I was really drawn to her because she looked like me, and I really remember feeling a special connection to her. But when I look back, she was one of the only female athletes, Asian athletes out there with big name recognition. And it's amazing today that there are many more. But this evening, I want to share a story from my more formative Frisbee years about how representation can pull you in, or how the lack of it or consequential harm can really push you out. So when I was a freshman in college, and I was past my Michelle Kwan days, my high school bestie and I, we tried out for the Ultimate team at UC San Diego. And we were super excited to try this new sport. She's also Asian. She is the same height. We're both 5'2", and because we were from the same hometown and we literally went to the first practice together, everyone immediately joked how they could not tell us apart, how we were the same person, how they were always getting our names confused. So if you're not white, this probably sounds familiar to you. And being lumped together because you're either Black, brown, or Asian, this is an example of a microaggression. And a microaggression might seem harmless, but I like to think of them as like mosquito bites. One in isolation might be okay, but over time, a ton of mosquito bites can be quite debilitating. So the tipping point was when the coach and captains on my team started co-opting these jokes to the point where I really thought they only saw me as the other small freshman Asian, and I really began to feel sidelined. I began to feel like my counterpart rookies that I joined the team with who were white were getting more PT. Maybe they weren't, maybe they were, but I felt like they were, and they were receiving more guidance and support. And to me, it felt like they were receiving more encouragement to shine, while my friend and I, we were still at the point where they didn't know our names, or they kept getting our names confused. The worst part, similar to Addie, but in a different way, was that this started to create a divide between my relationship with my high school friend, the one that I joined with. And it started to push us apart because we didn't really want to be lumped together. But upon reflection, it was this resentment that was really neither of our faults. And it's disappointing. It's disappointing to think back on that. But after this first year, I considered quitting. But luckily, my team, the relationships that I forged on the team were really formative and great and pulled me back in. My team had a good amount of diversity. And while I didn't always enjoy the practices or interactions with my coach, I did forge really great relationships with my teammates. I was also in a public school in California, where a lot of people who look like me succeeded frequently. And so because I had those relationships, because I had that environment, I didn't decide to quit. And in some ways, I look back on that as representation helping me pull back into the Ultimate environment. So each one of us has many identities. We could identify as animal lovers, vegetarians, or an athlete, but some identities are much more visible than others and hold stronger weight in society, whether you feel connected to it or not. So that first year of Frisbee, I felt like my visible identity as an Asian person on the team with the all-white leadership was pigeonholed into something I wasn't really comfortable with. And so I didn't really feel fully seen or recognized until a few years later when the coach changed. So I'm super grateful for all the women of color athletes like Michelle Kwan, like others today, who have paved the road for us to be seen. And so I just want to end that. My message to all of the young Asian American players out there or players of color, I see the full you, and I just want you to know that you should look for a team culture where you can really be the full you. And please support each other, because when we want to build meaningful representation on and off the field, we have to do it together. So that's all for now, and I'll be passing it to Ash.
Hey everyone, so my name is Ashley. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and my racial identity is white. And so a lot of you are probably wondering why this white person is speaking on a panel about representation. But I'm here to remind you that not all identities, again, are visible. I'm a trans woman, and so a lot of my experiences are shaped by the fact that I am a white person, and I do function in the society as someone who is also cis passing, and that allows me to, again, navigate this world safely and freely, whereas a lot of trans and non-binary folks might not have that option. And so again, this kind of frames my experience in Ultimate and sports in general with that identity. So I played college Ultimate for a men's team and from 2005 to 2009, and I just never really fit. At the time I knew I was trans, I wasn't open about it with anyone, and so I just really closed off from the people around me. And so after I graduated Iowa State, where I played, I ended up quitting Ultimate, like playing competitive Ultimate altogether. And then I didn't end up starting to play again until 2017. I actually came out about being trans in 2012, and it took basically 5 years to feel comfortable with myself to decide to play Ultimate again and to at least try out to play in the women's division for a team in Kansas City Wicked. So after I ended up making that team, the 3 years that I played for them, I had been very open about my journey and my experiences through like articles that I'd written, speaking on panels for USAU, working on video projects and other things. But I moved to Baltimore in October of last year, and all of that kind of changed for me. I was just very comfortable like being who I am and being open about myself. But moving to Baltimore, a lot of those early fears I had about sharing my journey and just sharing like my whole self instead of just like parts of me, a lot of that fear kind of bubbled back to the surface. Unfortunately, in society, trans folks and non-binary folks are still like at the margins of society, and especially in sports, trans women in particular are constantly faced with ignorance and bigotry when it comes to participation in a space that we want to feel safe and where we want to feel supported and empowered. And so when I moved to Baltimore, I had intended to continue being open about my journey and talking about it, but that fear just like came forth and I didn't tell anyone. And I just kind of lived in this almost like liminal space where I could exist as someone who is cis passing, and I didn't have to approach the idea of me being trans and facing how people might feel about me playing sports and particularly playing Ultimate. And so I just kind of lived in that space for like October, November, December into January. And then that led me, when I tried out for Shadow, again, I was just kind of terrified about opening up about like my journey, about who I am. And a lot of that fear revolved around the fact I was worried that like, what will people think if they find out I'm trans? Are they going to credit my skill and my ability on the field to the fact that I was assigned male at birth instead of just that I'm another woman out there on the field competing? And so I was just very afraid to open up about it because I don't want all of my hard work to be discredited over, again, what amounts to a lot of ignorance. And so for me, it's just, again, very, very tough to open up about that. I mean, I imagine a lot of people on Shadow had no idea that I was trans. I also coach a college women's team, and I'm certain that a lot of them had no idea either. But again, it was just kind of this thing where I wanted to be safe, and I was just afraid to really open up about that, kind of like a self-preservation method. But it also had like the negative effect of like kind of putting me back into the box, like back into the closet. And it was kind of suffocating in all honesty. And so like doing this panel and some other stuff with PUL and just really opening up and talking about my story again has allowed me to just kind of overcome that. I'm still scared and still nervous how people will perceive me after this. But it's something that I just have to own because I do know there are so many trans and non-binary kids who play sports, and they're in these situations where they might not feel safe playing because the community that they're growing up in or the community of sports where they are wants to reject them and stop them from playing. Right now in the US, I think there's 10 states that have cases that are basically trying to legislate trans participation and make it not legal, in particular for trans female athletes, trans girls, and it really just affects everyone. But it's just, yeah, it's so heartbreaking and so frustrating when I see these young athletes not being able to find a space like that I found that will support them and empower them. And so again, for me, like representation is just so important because I do want those young athletes and college athletes and other trans non-binary folks who might not be out or might not feel safe to play the sport that we all love, that there are people out there that they can look to and see that we're doing everything we can to make the sport more accessible to them. And so, yeah, so representation is just so, so important to me. And one thing that I really like to say just to all the youth out there that are playing Ultimate, and this kind of echoes Bowser's thoughts, but I mean, I do see you, and I know it is so hard to exist in a society where we are so often pushed to the margins. And but I do want you to know that within Ultimate and within these various teams, I found a space that is so supportive of me and makes me feel welcomed and makes me feel like I can be myself at all times. And so I want you all to know that we're here and we're here for you. So yeah, so that's kind of my story. And yeah, so I'll turn it over back to Bowser for some to wrap this up.
Yeah, last wrap up thoughts. I just want to thank everyone out there who's listening or might listen to this later. Thank you for listening to our stories, but these are just 3 of many stories out there, a taste of the spectrum of representation that could be possible for the PUL, for Ultimate, for the future. And we hope this reminds you that as you return back to school or enter a new team atmosphere, remember to be thoughtful and aware, remember to reflect and to learn. But right now, if you have extra time on your hands because you're at home, take this time right now to reflect and learn. And there's a lot out there of resources, but we just wanted to highlight one resource that you could easily follow now on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. It's called 99 Days of Ultimate Women. It's a 99-day campaign that starts later in the summer, I think, but every day, every week, someone takes over and shares different articles, thoughts, insights on topics like what we were talking about tonight. So back to you, Laurel.
And I just want to thank you all again for sharing your stories. This was one of the most unscripted panels that we've had and that we had in practice. And it was wonderful to hear what you were all able to come up with and to see also you all continue to share your story. And to all the white folks out there, particularly, I just want to call you in. We have an opportunity right now while we acknowledge and recognize the incredible inequalities that are happening and being extensively highlighted by this pandemic. And so it's a really important time that we aren't just reading and learning, as Bowser mentioned, to do in our free time. We're also going out there and we're making significant action, whether that's signing, totally blanking on the word, but signing protest and change that we need to bring about, but also being able to just support folks who need food banks and other access to delivery food. And as the chat is reminding me from the Zoom, it is petitions is the word that I'm looking for. Just want to thank this panel again, recognize that this is something we do not have enough time for, but thank you for all of your honesty. We're only going to try to figure or fit, you got me all now choked up on my words to this panel, but we're going to try to follow this up with some other of the best, talking now about world's experience. This next panel is going to bring a talented group of folks together, including head coach Allison Maddox, assistant coach Chance Cochran, Jenny Fay, and Carolyn Nomile. And I'm going to direct this first question to Carolyn to start. Why did you choose to try out for the Worlds program?
Hi, so yeah, I tried out. Well, so when I was a senior in high school, my Ultimate Frisbee coach told me about U20 Worlds. So that was my first introduction to it. I didn't really know what it was at the time, but decided to apply to try out. I got invited to tryouts and just had a really incredible experience. It was unlike anything I'd ever played before. The Ultimate was incredible. It was super high level. And I ended up being selected as an alternate for that team. And I did not end up getting the chance to go to the tournament, which was a little bit of a bummer, but I was just still super incredibly grateful for the awesome experience that tryouts was. And so the following year, there were applications coming out for U24 Worlds. And so I decided to apply to try out for U24. I did not expect to make the team at all, having not made the U20 team the previous year, but I just wanted to have that experience of super high level Ultimate, playing against really great people and having just an awesome weekend. So I went to those tryouts and ended up making the team. That was in 2015. And then I played U24 again in 2018. And then recently I was just selected for the WUGC Worlds team as well. So that's how I got started.
I kind of got a similar start to Carolyn, where I was encouraged to apply after playing for a little bit in high school. I was lucky to grow up in Arlington, where there was an established program, and I got to kind of follow in the footsteps of like JoJo Emerson and Jenny Fay, who had made U20 national teams before, so it was like a little bit more on the radar. But for U20 is the first time I applied, I got waitlisted. And then accepted off the wait list to tryouts, which I ended up not being able to attend because I had a hamstring injury, which is pretty heartbreaking as a start. Then I went into my U24 tryout after playing my first season of college with a similar mindset to, I think, Carolyn's first U24 tryout. I was excited to be there. I was excited to get invited and was just there to learn and have fun. And I think that I learned maybe the most I've ever learned in a weekend of Frisbee that weekend. I came back this last cycle, also trying out for U24s, and this time I was more of a favorite, and I was there to make the team, and that ended up working out the second time. So it's been a long journey, but was a really cool progression.
And you're both calling it a tryout process that obviously has changed throughout the years for USA Ultimate. But to just kind of transfer on to the next question, what are your favorite Worlds memories?
Yeah, I can take that one. I think you set that up nicely, mentioning the tryout process, because when I think about my favorite Worlds memories, they really do start with the tryouts. I got to play, like Chance mentioned, I played U20 back when there weren't a lot of U20 girls in the country. I think I played in 2004. And then I also played mixed Worlds on beach in 2015, and then in 2016 on the women's national team. And like Carolyn, am now on the national team for UGC, which theoretically was going to be happening this summer. I'm on the mixed team. We're hopeful that it'll get rescheduled, but unclear. But in all the cases where I've played, I also have tried out and didn't make World Games. The most positive experiences for me really connected to the humans that I met, starting really at the tryout level. And I feel like those friendships and those connections with players outside of my region, outside of my team, really transcended into my club experience over the last decade and a half. I'm one of the older players on this team, maybe the oldest, I'm not sure, but no, not quite. But I've had a lot of years of playing club against people that I otherwise maybe wouldn't have known. And connecting with them. I mean, Worlds tryouts were not the only way, or Worlds teams were not the only way to connect with them, but they kind of offer this unique experience to play together for a little while with people that you wouldn't normally play with. And I think when I was younger, I definitely had like, my team is the best, everyone else is the rest mentality kind of thing. And I think I'm a better human and better player as a result of seeing my opponents as friends. And Worlds kind of offered me that. I got a couple of the women that I played with on U20, Georgia Bosher, who's a big name, and Rory Titcomb, one of the 5 siblings. They are players that I got to play with again in 2016, and I got to play with Georgia in club when she came and joined me for Space Eater. So these really important friendships that started, 16 years ago now, have really been the biggest takeaway. And my favorite memory is just his connections that I've made. If that makes sense.
Hi,
Casual
everyone.
couple name drops there. Sorry, Allison.
Yeah, just chiming in. I think similar to some of the other points that have been brought up, even about just trying out for the team, something that I am very thankful for and just kind of remember the most from my Worlds experiences have been the bonds and just actually the time off the field. And I think that's because, like, kind of as you kind of move along in your career, you're working full time, and kind of Ultimate is this other thing that you fit in. And college is really that time in your Ultimate career where it's just you eat, breathe, live Ultimate, and it's such a fun time period in your life. So going to Worlds tournaments, like kind of later on in your career, which is what I did, was an opportunity to just revisit that time, because you're often going overseas and you don't have anything else you have to think about for that week or however long it is. And so you get to just kind of be in this Ultimate bubble, and you just get to focus on it, and you get to focus on your team, and you get to have these incredible experiences with your teammates, which is something that is really rare, especially as you get into your later 20s, early 30s. So more than actually just playing, I mean, I don't even really remember a lot of the games very well. I think I remember, the time when the stick shift on our little rental in Italy went out, and we had to like turn the car, and we were going down this hill, and it was really crazy. Or visiting like French markets, and getting like kind of just picking up our lunch materials and eating it on the beach. Like those are the things I remember the most.
Yeah, and something that's really unique about Worlds is just getting to interact with the teams from other countries and getting to share that same experience. So a favorite memory of mine is at U24 in 2015, the Indian mixed team came up to us and performed a dance for us that they had come up with, kind of out of the blue, and it was a really cool experience. And then over the next few days, we decided to come up with our own dance to perform back for them. So we spent a few days coming up with this dance, and then we were able to find them after one of their games and perform this dance for them. And it was really cool, and ended up just turning into a big dance party, like right on the fields, and just really unique experiences like that. Sharing that with other international teams is really cool.
So some of you are coaches, some of you are players, some of you are both, but to Shadow, you chose a certain role. But why are you the coach or player that you are today? Because of your Worlds experience.
I think I just got so much out of such a concentrated amount of time at Worlds, which was just an incredible experience. I think that both with tryouts and with the training camp leading up to the tournament itself, it's just so many high quality reps against this top tier of players. And that's really cool, not just because of the level of play all the time, but you just have a ton of smart people from all over the country with a ton of different ideas. And so both in my coaching and playing mindset, it introduced me to a different way to approach problems, and like even different language for things that I'd been using for a long time. And I think that was really one of the things that I took the most out of it. The only other thing is, like Jenny was kind of mentioning earlier, there's something really special about having friends on all these different teams. And I think that is maybe more than anything else, something that has made me more effective as a player and coach following the World experience.
Yeah, I think for me, it gets to some of the themes that some of the previous panels spoke to, which is stepping out of your comfort zone. I remember going to a Worlds team tryout, I think it was in 2013, and felt like I had no reason to be there and was dealing with severe imposter syndrome. And I think anytime you kind of go to a Worlds tournament, you're kind of not certain what's going to happen. You're not sure how these other international teams are going to play because you haven't played against them. So I think kind of just the general putting yourself into positions like that more frequently is something that has impacted me as a player, as a coach. It's part of why I even threw my name in to be a head coach of DC Shadow this year. And it just reverberates to other parts of your life, which are just really invaluable. I think also, kind of in hindsight, now that I'm at the end of my playing career, looking back at my Worlds experiences really gave me a lot of respect for how much Ultimate had done for me in my life in terms of friendships and
character traits I had kind of obtained over the years, and also just the incredible amount of work that players and people put into the sport. I think looking at how other people interpret Frisbee, it could be kind of taken less seriously, but definitely being in a Worlds environment, you realize, no, this is completely legit and it's super awesome to be here. So I think all of those things combined, like the respect for the sport and being in uncomfortable positions, really impacted me now as a coach, because I'm here and I probably wouldn't have even volunteered if I, or, wanted to put my name into the hat if I hadn't had those experiences.
And if you could look back and give one piece of advice to younger players on how to get to Worlds or have that Worlds mentality, what would it be?
I can speak to that. I think it's really important, like as we're talking about Worlds, I think it's important to acknowledge that there's, Worlds is this kind of, a lot of people set achieving, making it a Worlds team as a goal, but it's really not something we have complete control over. And that's true of any time you're trying out for a team. Like, you can put a lot of hard work in, but you never have complete control over whether you're going to make any team that you try out for. And so I think something in terms of like shifting your mindset around your ultimate experience, and process with the game is to kind of switch your focus to something that you can control. And I think one specific one that I've really thought a lot about, and I see represented and demonstrated by a lot of really successful Worlds level players, is kind of a ability to think about one's game, and critically think about it without incorporating self-evaluation, like in terms of your worth as a person. So if I was to sort of describe that, like, I know that a lot of us, young players, but all of us, I think we really care about Ultimate. Ultimate has offered a lot to us, like Allison was talking about. And sometimes we struggle to separate a lot of our identity from Ultimate, and maybe that's understandable and good. I mean, Ultimate offers us so much, which is why we're missing it so much right now. I mean, it's a big center of our physical life, obviously, but our personal and social life, emotional, psychological life, which is why it's important that we think about representation too, because it's in sports are political, obviously, in all these ways. But because we invest so much and we care so much, when we are working on our ultimate game, it's hard to separate some of that, like our self-worth, from that. And when we want to get better at the sport, that kind of line gets a little fuzzy. So I would say learning how to think critically about yourself and your play, and then separate that from your own value as a person. And so when you judge yourself, you're not necessarily saying, you're sort of judging what happened in the moment, but you're not judging yourself as a good or bad person or a good or bad teammate and all these things. So it's hard to struggle and to experience failure, but that's really the only way to grow with anything, is to struggle and fail. And like Allison said, put yourself out of your comfort zone. So I guess this is how I describe it, like try to practice accepting feedback. And I would start with yourself, feedback from yourself, also from the disc, like where did the disc go when you tried this? And also from coaches and other people that you trust. I don't think you necessarily need to blindly accept feedback from every person around you, but make these connections with people you trust, such as your coaches, and learn to accept feedback from them and yourself I kind of would describe it as like a detached curiosity about what is happening. So like, why did that happen on the field? What could I change? And not even, necessarily what would be better, but just what would happen if I changed this in this way, kind of thing. If I took that feedback and tried to apply it, what would happen? And then kind of knowing and trusting that you are a valuable, wonderful person outside of that, no matter what's going on. And so I think getting to that place where you're able to think critically it's hard, but it's really, really worthwhile, and it can push you to the next level, no matter what that level is, whether Worlds is the goal right now, or if it's like a down the line goal, or if you're just trying to, get a new role on a team or make a new team. I just think that's a great mental muscle to exercise. And I think that's a big part of my Worlds journey, has been kind of embracing that mentality around progress. So, and I would also just add, my other piece of advice is really, and I think someone else might jump on this too, but just please throw your name in the hat and apply for Worlds sometime soon. The sooner the better, because you may not even, as Chance noted, I'm not sure if that was true for Carolyn, but I think he didn't get invited the first time he applied, and then he did. But getting your name out there and just putting yourself out of your comfort zone is a great a great choice. Starts the journey.
Yeah, so my advice, I mean, I think definitely you can have the goal of making it to a world's team, but exactly to the point that Jenny made, so much of it is out of your control. I really think the best way to approach it is that that's not an end necessarily. I think if you make it to that point, it's going to be a byproduct of everything that you've put in on the current team you're on and the current role you're in. So my advice is really to find ways that you can excel in your current role and your current position. And really focus on your team. You're going to learn so much more from that, and you're going to become such a better player by focusing on what you can do now. And it's these little incremental steps that just seem day to day that eventually at the end of a career will add up to like a complete body of work. So, I mean, for me, every team I've been on, that's been the only thing I've been focused on from college up to the different club teams I played on. So I think that's my best advice. I think if you are pigeonholing yourself to a goal of making it to a world's team, similar to what Jenny said, you're tying so much to that end result when really you just don't have much control over that. So I think the way that you best posture yourself for being on a team is every day working really hard and excelling on the team that you're on.
Incredible. So I'm going to go work out after this. I don't know about you, but remembering process goals, as was said in this panel. And again, if you have any more questions on either the tryout process or any advice or feedback from these Worlds players, please email us at dcshadowultimate@gmail.com, and they would be more than happy to answer. We're going up with our sixth panel here, and I'd like to welcome Marley Ackerson, Lauren Allen, Nicole Wilkinson, and Maria Cici Pascale to discuss playing Ultimate in college. So to the players, what were some of your favorite parts of playing College Ultimate?
All right, so hi guys, I'm Nicole, and just to give you guys some context, I graduated last year from Case Western Reserve University, which is located in the breathtaking city of Cleveland, Ohio. And Case has about 6,000 undergrad and a really fun and amazing D1 Ultimate program there. So for me, continuing to play Ultimate in college was probably one of the most important and best decisions I made in those 4 years, because not only did it really give me like a home away from home feeling, but also in a medium-sized school like Case, like everywhere I went, nearly everywhere I went on campus, I would see a familiar face from the team, which was really, really nice. And also just being a part of such a warm and loving community of people, it just made me feel really supported and even more passionate about the sport itself. So I think that was probably my favorite part.
Hi everybody, my name is Marley Ackerson. I graduated last year in 2019 from Colorado College, which is a small liberal arts school in Colorado Springs. And for me, it was a great athletic and competitive release. It was a great way to work on specific athletic goals, like getting faster or stronger or honing my throwing abilities. And it was a great way to see that hard work pay off in a really tangible way in the games and the tournaments that my college team went to. And more than anything, it was an amazing social outlet. It was a great way to meet people going into my freshman year of college. And I met my best friends on the team, and I lived with them my subsequent 3 years of college. And it was a great break from all the daily stressors that come with being a college student. So yeah, I couldn't recommend it enough.
Hi everyone, I'm Lauren Allen. I graduated from Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. in 2017. One of my favorite parts of the College Ultimate experience was that it was a brand new sport for me. I'd never played before, and I thought it was such a unique experience getting to learn how to play a new sport with a bunch of other people that were also new to the sport and hadn't played before. I think, you know, it's common to maybe go to college and connect with others over shared hobbies. But it's kind of unique to basically, you know, discover this whole new world, this whole new sport at the same time as others are discovering it. And I thought that was just a really fantastic way to bond with people and get to know people and meet people. And thought that was, you know, kind of a special distinction that Frisbee has, given that it's, you know, not quite as well known as other sports. Obviously, there's a lot of people that come in with experience. But it was fun to come in and learn something brand new with a brand new group of people.
Hey, I'm Cece, and my real name is Maria, but Cece is the nickname I received at University of Maryland.
which is about 30,000 undergrads and where I was very proud to play on Helpful Corn. And one of the things that I loved about College Ultimate was, in addition to getting to play a new sport and bond with teammates like Lauren was mentioning, and getting to have a community that was kind of created for me, is also being able to really dive into some of the school spirit. And college teams have some of the most like ridiculous jerseys. So this is one of ours. It's a corn laying out for a Frisbee. And so I loved being able to dive into school and feel like I was a part of the university in addition to a part of that community. And with 30,000 undergraduates, having different chunks of people built out, like I met people in my freshman dorm and those are some of my best friends, but having this other set of people that I got to get to know and have that be an age range instead of only freshmen like I lived with was really wonderful. And yeah, can't recommend it enough. It's some of the best experiences of college.
And you talk about experience of playing just as much as being at college, and we all know that college means school. So how do you balance school and playing Ultimate?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think a lot of Ultimate players come to this dilemma several times over their playing experience. For me, I think it was helpful to think about it as a fixed commitment. So, you know, you don't skip out on your classes, you don't skip out on your Frisbee practices and your Frisbee commitments. So that was one way that I thought about it. The other thing that was helpful for me is that it's really healthy to take a break, both physically and get out there and get moving and get some exercise. It's also really important to take a break mentally and socially and get to see your friends. So, you know, remembering both of those things kind of helped me prioritize practice, even when I had other responsibilities I also had to fulfill.
Yeah, so just adding on to that, if there was a golden question, this would definitely be that question, because I mean, I personally, and yeah, like Lauren said, pretty much everyone who plays Frisbee in college knows how much of a time commitment it is. And it was definitely really hard for me at times, but I'd say that looking back on it, like the experience you get out is really what you put into it. So like, for instance, I remember a weekend where I sacrificed that whole weekend of studying to go drive down like 8 hours down and back to a tournament with a test first thing Monday morning. And honestly, I don't really remember how I did on that test, but I can assure you that I did fine and I'm okay. But like, if you choose to be super committed to Ultimate, just know that probably along the way you will have to make some sacrifices. But something that helps with that is like choosing to be proactive about your schedule, making to-do lists or personal deadlines for yourself. If you know that you have like upcoming tournaments or upcoming tests after tournaments, that will really make that hard for you. But just be proactive and hold yourself accountable for your own work.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Nicole and Lauren on how to do the balance successfully, and want to emphasize that there isn't a right answer on when you need to make school your priority versus Ultimate being your priority. For a lot of people, college is a financial commitment and a time commitment as much as it's something you're excited to do. And I know for myself, one of the decisions that I had to make going into my senior year was choosing to not take a leadership role on the team after being involved in our core as a sophomore and junior. And that was so that I could focus on my capstone project. That was another thing I was passionate about, but also something that was required for me to graduate. And so to instead commit to a way that I could serve the team well and responsibly by being a leader on the field and attending practices, but not taking on a leadership role when I knew I wouldn't be able to help plan those practices, was a good balance to strike. And it's something that every individual has to make those decisions for themselves. Oh, Marley, you're muted.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. It was nice to view Frisbee as an aid to my productivity instead of a deterrent to it. It was helpful to view Frisbee practices and throwing with friends as a break from schoolwork and a break from how stressful daily college life can be. And I often viewed the practices and the Frisbee breaks I had throughout the week as the ultimate reset. And I was able to reset myself and rebalance all the stressful things that were going on. And it was helpful being more productive and going forward after that.
So along with school, another big thing, or along with school work, another big part of college is going abroad. So did anyone go abroad? And if yes, where did you go?
Yes. I studied abroad twice while I was at school, and I chose to do both of my experiences. I went to Nicaragua in the summer after my freshman year and to New Zealand in the winter of my sophomore year, I think. And the reason for not going in the spring or fall, as much as it was to not miss Ultimate, it was also not to miss the rest of college, because I was really excited to be on campus and having the whole school experience. But going on both of those experiences was really eye-opening. I don't think I realized how much of a kind of sheltered bubble I lived in, which it was a wonderful sheltered bubble, but I didn't realize it until I went abroad to Nicaragua. So definitely recommend it. But yeah, I was happy to do it in the off season.
I also studied abroad in the off season, so I didn't want to miss the fall season. But I studied abroad in Lyon, France, and cannot recommend the experience enough. I think it's not something that you get a chance to do very often later in your life. So as much as it's hard to step away from classes and, well, you still take classes, but from your friends and your campus and everything that you're familiar with, I really think it's worth, taking the semester off or the summer. And I also had a really great time meeting people abroad that played Frisbee. It's one of the ways that I met people beyond my classes when I was in France. So I, traveled to different places, played on a French team that were called the Mosquitoes, which is probably the least scary team mascot I've yet to play on, for a team I've yet to play on. And I got to play on some pretty cool tournaments down in Spain. It was so fun being able to meet people beyond, in the World Ultimate community. I still talk to them, still, follow a lot of them on social media and check up on them. So not only do I think it was a great experience, academically and just, getting to experience a new city, it was also a really fun way to kind of broaden my Ultimate network.
I did not go abroad for personal reasons at the time, but I think one of my regrets from college is not going abroad. Like Lauren was saying, it's a really unique opportunity, and you don't get it very often. And I think everyone who has the opportunity and the availability to go abroad should in some capacity, just because it seems like a really life-changing opportunity.
Yeah, I second that. I didn't go abroad, and I don't really have an excuse why I didn't go. But based on what Cece and Lauren said, go for it.
So that's some advice, and we're leaning into the next question, which is, if you have any advice to college players or players entering college, what would it be?
Yeah, I can start us off with this one. First piece of advice would definitely be to throw way more than you think you need to. You'll never regret throwing more. No matter what point you're at in your Frisbee career, throwing will always help. And a second piece of advice would be to diversify your interests in college. You only have 4 or 5 sometimes years of college Frisbee, but you also only have 4 years of college in general. So try a lot of new things, go to a lot of presentations and panels and speeches, and feed a lot of your interests, not just your Frisbee interest, because sometimes that one can feel the hungriest.
Yeah, I would definitely say to lean in, and like Marley's saying, that's not just in Frisbee, that's all of the things outside of Frisbee. My path during college, I knew I wanted to play Frisbee in college because I knew how fun of a community it was, and my parents played, so I knew it was something I wanted, but I wouldn't say I leaned into the practicing part quite as much until I was in my older years. And I went to all the practices because I loved hanging out with everyone, but I don't think I threw outside of practice until I was a junior. And that is something where I saw really rapid improvement once I started investing time off the field. But also, I wouldn't say I regret it either, because I did a lot with my living learning community and have no regrets there. And going to college sports games, mostly for me, soccer and women's basketball at Maryland is really phenomenal. So lean into all of the experiences. And for people who have some uncertainties going into the fall with not knowing if schools are going to be on campus with coronavirus, a local youth player, Leah Schwartz, put together a website, Ultimately Together. And that's a place where you can go and check out what college teams are available at different universities. And yeah, feel free to check it out. I'm sure it'll get posted in the chat channel thing. But yeah, that's a good opportunity to start getting to know the community, even if you aren't able to be on campus in the fall.
Yeah, so my advice to freshmen would be to try to go to as many social events as you can, like club bonding, team bonding, whatever that event. Because I know personally for me, when I was a freshman, I was a little bit quiet and on the timid side as a rookie, and it didn't help that I was pretty much injured for the entirety of my freshman year, so I wasn't like super able to be involved at practice too. But going to those like social hangouts with the club really was important in drawing me into the club as a whole, and like making me feel like I had friends and was supported by people. So that's what I would recommend.
My number one piece of advice for my freshman self would be to not be afraid to make mistakes. I think I was, maybe intimidated by all these other upperclassmen that knew what they were doing, and I was always afraid to drop the disc. I didn't know how to throw a flick or anything, and I wish I would have shed off a little bit of that anxiety and just, and had fun and let myself experiment on things without worrying about messing up. College is a great time to experiment. It's a great time to learn new things, to put yourself out there. So that would be my advice to my past self.
Well, all of that is incredible advice. And to all of the young players thinking about college this fall or considering, I know that the current pandemic has thrown a lot of those plans to not be as straightforward as you initially planned for. If you have any questions on how to stay involved with your campus's Ultimate program or to get involved, please reach out at dcshadowultimate@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to follow up and work with you individually. Thank you so much to this panel. And this is actually going to bring us to our next and final panel, which is training for Ultimate. So in case you need something else to do while you're just hanging around the house. And this will include Michelle Mitch Landis, Kate Trineri, Emily Grimes, Ashley Sylvester, and assistant coach Kelly Ross. So how do you typically train for an Ultimate season? Kate, I've seen your layouts. Let's direct this one to you.
Thanks, Laurel. So regardless of where I am within the season, I found it really important to be part of a consistent training program year round. For me, that usually means 5 to 6 days a week of training, and that's usually broken down by 2 to 3 days lifting in the gym, one field workout that's focused on agility and conditioning, and then 1 to 2 days of cardio output or low intensity conditioning. And then on top of that, playing anywhere from 1 to 3 times a week, depending on where we're at within the season. So getting plenty of touches through mini league games or tournaments, and then always throwing in some ways often as possible, echoing some of what the last panel was saying. And that's usually in addition to one of those other sessions. And then aside from that, I usually think of a season in 3 parts. So off season, preseason, and in season. The off season is where I'm focused on building a base. So doing a lot of lifting and a lot of low intensity cardio work, ramping up weight and duration week over week. And then gradually starting to transition from low and slow lifts to more explosive lifts where I'm moving volume a lot faster. And then in the preseason, it's all about building volume. So doing more of everything, keeping up with developing strength and power through lifting, and then starting to do longer and higher intensity running and field workouts. And really just working on increasing output and recovery. And then in season, it's all about building speed and maximum performance. So typically reduce the training schedule and volume a little bit to account for tournaments and practices. And then really focused on speed, agility, and technical execution and performance. And then it's often very, very hard to schedules, but I try not to think of this as time for maintenance, but rather time to keep making progress through in season so that I'm thinking about developing year over year and not just within the season itself. And then the last thing I'll say is that recovery is really, really important for all of this, especially as you get older. So I personally rely on yoga, contrast baths, and saunas in addition to good sleep, hydration, and nutrition, which I know Emily will talk a little bit more about too.
Thanks, Kate. My training schedule is a lot like Kate's. It also goes year round, but that's mainly because I'm constantly playing Ultimate. throughout the year. The great thing that was mentioned earlier about the DC metro area is that it has plenty of league and pickup options for all skill levels. So we're really lucky to be in this area. If I break my training schedule into 3 sections like Kate did, my off season, I probably get touches on the disc 1 to 2 times a week through leagues or pickup games. If the Ultimate community isn't as established where you are, I would try to set up games of mini or practice dynamic passing drills to try to work on those game time situations. In the off season, I also do a lot of cross training. I believe you should be staying active 5 to 6 times a week in the off season, but personally, I don't make them all Ultimate specific. I swap out field training or sprint days with yoga, swimming, or rock climbing. These are all low impact activities that work on strengthening and balancing muscles that are not usually used in Ultimate. My preseason starts 3 to 4 months before tryouts. Tryouts aren't necessarily a peak for me, but this is a point where I want to be finished building strength and endurance. So then I can have a foundation to focus on sharpening agility or dynamic game time movements. Through this preseason, it usually includes lifting 2 to 3 times a week with higher reps, like Kate was saying, or higher weight. I'm also transitioning endurance-based activity to sprint sets, really working on my first step speed. I also decrease my playing in games like pickups or leagues to once a week to decrease my risk of injury, but also keep up that game time speed like I was talking about earlier. In season, this really depends on my practice or tournament schedule. I usually train 2 to 3 times a week outside of practice and games. It's usually 2 lifts and 1 field conditioning day. But I also add in aqua jogging or yoga as recovery training for after tournament weekends or really hard practices. Kate mentioned earlier about hydration and nutrition and sleep and how this all really impacts training. And it might not be the first thing that people think about when they think of training. I foam roll and stretch before and after every single workout session. And it's really, really important to warm up and cool down the body before exercises. I can't stress that enough. It's important in terms of recovery, but also injury reduction. Hydration, especially leading up to tournaments, can strongly impact your level of play come game day. My pre-tournament ritual the week prior to a really important practice tryout tournament would be drinking a cup of water right when you wake up, 2 liters of water during the day, and then a cup of water right before you go to bed. Game day, I usually add electrolytes like sport drinks or maybe even some pickle juice. Sleep and nutrition don't change much for me during the season. I created a pre-workout and post-workout snack that works for my body, but everyone reacts differently. Just be sure that leading up to an important practice or game that you stick to your normal diet. Don't switch it up and put more carbs in or less protein because you really don't know how your body's going to react. Same with sleep, for me, 7 to 9 hours, just consistency is key.
And that is amazing information. If you didn't catch everything or need to go back and take notes, this video will be available later. And we have been talking about COVID-19 as something that has truly impacted the season. So to Mitch, how has this made you adapt your training?
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle or Mitch. So just to preface things, I do the same training program as Kate does. So I train 5 days a week, and that really hasn't changed at all since COVID-19 has started. I've actually been training more consistently because unfortunately I've been furloughed for a month. So the major things are I'm still working out 5 to 6 days a week. I've had to adjust my lifting workouts because I don't have access to a gym anymore. I have one 55-pound kettlebell that I use. If you don't have kettlebells or weights or anything, the best thing to do would be find heavy objects in your house, such as a bag of rice, a bag of beans, textbooks, heavy pots and pans, put them in something like a backpack or a duffel bag, and you can use that in place of weightlifting. Another big thing that I'm going to start doing with workout adjustments this coming week is to add in 1 to 2 workouts a week where I try to simulate gameplay, but on my own. So typically during this time, we would be having practices twice a week. So what I'm going to be doing with these workouts is trying to structure them in the way that I would be cutting during a scrimmage. So I might run a 70-yard sprint, just like I'm running down the pole. I might do a lateral shuffle 5 yards there, 5 yards back to pretend like I'm on the mark. And then I might run a few cuts. So this is what I'm going to be starting to introduce into my training sessions in this coming week. But in general, keeping plan B as close to plan A as possible is what I've been doing, and it's been working well so far.
Yes, I feel like you guys have heard a lot of really good detailed information. And one thing that I was thinking about during this time is that you guys could really be throwing a lot. So whatever your quarantine family looks like, if you can throw multiple times a week, then you should do it. It's whether you're consider yourself a handler or cutter, you're never going to be throwing enough, I guess is what I want to say. And so just value that time and do it. And I think all Ultimate players have a goal of being really comfortable with the disc. And so I would say go ahead and do that. And then I say that, but I have a 1 and 3-year-old at home, and they're more like what everyone else has said. So I haven't been doing lifting, again, similar to Mitch, where I have not necessarily at a gym. I do have a few small weights at home. And so I've been doing kind of more of a HIIT style workout where I'm doing lifting and then I'm doing cardio, and I'm just doing them back and forth interspersed. And so I've got 2 days where I'm doing some weights, and then the other 2 days where I'm doing some fast footwork and then agility, and then on like another day, so that would be 4 days, and then I'd say 1 to 2 others you're looking at maybe getting outside, running, riding your bike, going on walks, things like that, anything that is just fun. And so in this time, it is really hard, right? Like we're so used to having that like training, like before, during, after, and this is a weird time. And so I would encourage you and say, find what you like to do and then be consistent in doing that. So it doesn't have to be a huge training plan. Just think about, okay, what are the small things that I can do? How long can I do it for? And then when you start building in this time, you're going to get that momentum and you're going to really enjoy doing it. And then I think as other people have talked about, like Ultimate, you have this community, right? And so we're missing our community and our friends. So find a buddy, find somebody who you can be accountable with and talk with them. Hey, what are you doing? What are you working on? And share that with them. And what you're going to find is that you'll be building this base so that you're ready when it comes time to jump back in whenever that is. And so I'd say be consistent, find and do what you enjoy doing. And then just like train to the best of your ability, right? So this is a different time, but you can still give whatever your 100% is in that time, and go ahead and do that. And then, I think our physical output really helps, like what's going on mentally with us too. So just know that that's really important, and you're going to feel really good when you're doing it. So.
Yeah, and I just want to add, as someone who's coming back from an injury, that this time is especially weird. When you were like had goals to like get back, and now like the season might not happen. So first, my heart goes out to everyone who has had a season canceled. I know, especially with high school teams, that is occurring, and it feels weird and frustrating to not have a season to like train for. But we can kind of make the best of this. So I think Mitch is going to kind of talk about some injury prevention, but I just wanted to say, if anyone is coming back from an injury, I definitely understand how difficult this all is, but luckily we have really rigid goals that we can keep working towards.
24 watching.
What was it?
All right, y'all. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about injury prevention. Just a little background on me. I am a strength and conditioning coach and a physical therapist in my professional life. So I kind of do this on a daily basis with my clients and my athletes. So the first thing I want to mention about injury prevention is that we can never guarantee that injuries are not going to happen, right? Sometimes things just happen that are out of our control. We collide with another player, the field was slippery, but what we can do is we can reduce the risk of injury by preparing ourselves for the game of Ultimate. There are 5 principles that I kind of like to talk about when explaining to people how you can reduce your risk for injury. The first principle is really you want to have a well-rounded training program. This goes back to what Kate and Emily were talking about. Training 5 to 6 days a week is the ideal goal, but also remembering that if you have never trained before, asking yourself to start training 5 to 6 days a week is a lot. Start small, start with 1 day a week, and progress that slowly over time. The number 2 principle of injury prevention is going to be consistent with your training. If, like I said, if you've never trained before, start small, start with 1 day a week, get help from somebody who knows how to train, and then build from there. Principle number 3 is if you are currently in pain or discomfort, seek out the help from either a sports doctor or a physical therapist. Both of these practitioners are skilled in identifying what your movement dysfunctions are and can point you in the right direction in terms of recovery and ultimately performance. The 4th key point about injury prevention is that there's kind of this idea going around that when there are specific exercises that everyone can do in general to prevent injuries. This is not necessarily the case. Everybody is an individual, and remember that everybody has individual differences in their movement patterns, in their limitations, and you really need to be assessed by someone in order to figure out what exercise or what exercise regimen is best for you. The 5th point that I want to make here, which a few of you have already touched on before, is you needed to make sure you develop sound recovery strategies. Your training is only going to prevent your injuries as much as you recover. Recovery is so important. The 4 really major key points to recovery are sleep, making sure you're getting enough sleep every night. 8 hours of sleep is ideal. Number 2 is nutrition, making sure you eat a balanced meal. In general, I think everybody can do a better job of eating more vegetables and more protein. Number 3 is hydration, drinking anywhere from ½ an ounce to 1 ounce of water per pound of body weight every day. And number 4 is, like Kate was talking about, incorporate low intensity cardio into your workouts. This can be things such as cardiac output, aerobic power intervals. What this allows you to do is it actually allows your system to be better recovered for the next day, as opposed to just, doing something like sitting on your butt and watching TV all day. So in summary, we can never guarantee that injuries are not going to happen. What we can do is we can prepare our bodies just like we prepare and study before we take a test.
And that's great advice. And we are running up to time, but I just want to give the rest of the panelists one last opportunity. What advice would you have for folks wherever they are in their training? We'll start with Emily.
Okay, so if I had to give one piece of advice for training purposes, I would just say, remember why you play the sport. Remember why you love Frisbee. I mean, with rigorous training schedules, it can be easy to lose motivation and can kind of forget what you're working towards. And whenever I feel this way, I kind of reflect. And I remember, the first score I got in a club game, or the first time I learned how to throw a flick flat. And these memories bring me like instant joy, instant happiness, and remind me why I'm working so hard and why I'm working to improve and push myself to make more of these memories. So just remind yourself of why you're here and why you're doing this.
So my piece of advice is, even if you don't currently have a goal or season to work towards this year, use this time, this extra time, to really focus on your fitness, mobility, and injury prevention. So that might look different from normal ultimate training, but you can still find a lot of resources out there and work towards being a healthier athlete.
I would add that building the skills and discipline to train for Ultimate will benefit you far beyond just the game itself. I think they're really the same skills that you need for a healthy lifestyle, both during and after your careers.
Yes, I would say be consistent and have fun with it, and just know that this is not forever. And so you're really going to get a lot out of what you put in right now, even though we don't know what the timeline for that looks like.
And I would say that the biggest pieces of advice are, number one, set a goal. What do you want to be able to accomplish in the sport of ultimate? Number two, be consistent with your training plan and your recovery plan. And number three, just remember that behavior change happens in small steps. So if you've never trained for ultimate before, you can't expect yourself or be too hard on yourself if you're not training 5 or 6 days a week.
Thank you so much to all of our panelists. And if that doesn't make you want to hit the gym, then I hope to see you in the stadium next year as one of our biggest fans. And if that does, then I hope to see you next year at tryouts. Again, if you have any specific follow-up questions, please email us at dcshadowultimate@gmail.com. Thank you again to all of the DC Shadow players who joined us tonight. It was such an honor getting to talk to you all and learn from some of the best players and coaches in the world. And I hope you had just as good of a time. If you have any more follow-up questions, you're always welcome to rewatch this video. It'll be on our YouTube. And again, you're welcome to email us at dcshadowultimate@gmail.com. We really appreciate everyone tuning in and for making this such a popular event. It was great having the opportunity to come together and support Shadow, even though it's a little different than we expected our season would be. Thank you for doing your part to support our essential workers and flatten the curve by staying home. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to stay engaged and for more information on our next event. Lastly, again, we'd like to thank our sponsors for helping make this night happen. VC Ultimate, Layout Gloves, Spin Ultimate, and the one and only Premier Ultimate League. And if you'd like to become a sponsor or learn more about how to become one, please reach out through our email. From DC and Washington Shadow, I'm Laurel Aldershaw signing up. Have a great evening, everyone, and go Shadow.